The Retroid Pocket Flip is yet another retro handheld console coming from Retroid. But the Retroid Pocket Flip does something completely different compared to the rest of the competition. And no, I'm not just talking about it being a clamshell. Kick off your shoes and relax your socks while we check out the Retroid Pocket Flip. Another day, another dollar, more like another day, another retro handheld gaming console. Since last year, it just seems like we've had a constant flood of retro gaming handheld consoles. And not just from different companies, most of the time from the same companies, Anbernic and Retroid. And Retroid have hit the market yet once again with another retro gaming handheld that doesn't seem to do a lot different compared to its predecessor, the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. Other than providing a new form factor which you might love if you love clamshell consoles, or you might hate if you don't. But whereas I thought the Retroid Pocket Flip was going to be a minor iteration over the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, and I wasn't really that excited about it, I was absolutely blown away when I got my hands on it and finally realized that it does something completely different to the rest of the competition. Now straight away, let's just get all the usual mumbo jumbo out of the way, because I'm starting to feel like a broken record constantly repeating the same kind of technical specs, the same emulation standards, because with so many consoles coming out these days, there's not really a lot to separate them, and a lot of the time they're using the same kind of hardware. So quickly, the Retroid Pocket Flip costs $164 if you get it from the Go Retroid site. It's got a range of awesome colours, included a special limited Sport Red edition, which I got personally and looks way better in life than it does in the pictures. The Retroid Pocket Flip comes packed with a T16 processor just like the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus and the RG405M. And along with that processor comes absolutely superb emulation all the way up to PlayStation 1, N64 and Dreamcast emulation. But like the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus and the RG405M, the Retroid Pocket Flip gives us some really good GameCube emulation and some pretty average PlayStation 2 emulation. If you want to find out what emulation is like on the T618 processors, then you can check out the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus versus the RG405M comparison videos that we did. And the Retroid Pocket Flip provides pretty much identical performance to those two consoles. Rounding off the generics, the Retroid Pocket Flip also has a 3.5 audio jack, USB 3, mini HDMI out, it's got some really nice speaker location on the back end, and usual air vents to help with cooling. Now you might think we've just flown past one of the most important things about a retro handheld console, the emulation performance, but like I said, we've discussed this processor quite a lot in other reviews, and there's not really a lot to add to the discussion. What is important, and what we do have a lot to talk about, is what the Retroid Pocket Flip brings extra to the retro gaming handheld market. Now, as is pretty obvious by the name, the Retroid Pocket Flip is a clamshell console, and the design of the Retroid Pocket Flip is absolutely gorgeous. It's a great size, and the clamshell aspects of it really make it pocket friendly. On top of that, the overall aesthetics and design that Retroid have gone for make this an absolutely gorgeous console. And like I said, for me personally, the Sports Red edition looks absolutely amazing. Some of the pre-renders maybe made the Sport Red version look a little bit tacky, and other options like the watermelon option, for example, look like the nicer choice. But in person, the watermelon just doesn't seem to pop as much as it did in those pre-renders. And the Sport Red version is so much classier when you get it in the palm of your hands. It feels like you're holding the Ferrari of retro gaming handheld consoles, to the point where all that dead space that kind of sits in the middle of the controls would look amazing if there was a little Ferrari sticker there, but that's just me. Fitting nicely into the clamshell design is an absolutely gorgeous 4.7-inch screen. That looks especially impressive because it occupies its own part of the console. Being on the top end, there's no controls around it, there's no triggers that are protruding out the edges, and it just frames the screen in such a way that it looks absolutely glorious. On top of that, the mini laptop feel that the Retroid Pocket Flip has makes it absolutely perfect for watching TV shows or movies when you just want to chill out. Being able to just place it on your desk, prop up the screen, sitting there not having to balance your console on anything or having to hold it in your hand, makes this an absolutely perfect mini cinema experience console. Moving down on the lower half of the clamshell, unfortunately we don't have a secondary screen, which would be awesome for DS gaming, but what we do have is a brilliant control layout. Now following on from the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, we have the same kind of D-pad and the same kind of face buttons, but that's where the similarities stop. The rest of the controls on the Retroid Pocket Flip are completely different. Firstly, there's the addition of the two new M1 and M2 buttons, a couple of extra programmable buttons which come in really handy when you're trying to emulate N64 games, or even the odd Wii game if you're pushing the console to its limits. Next, the M1 and M2 buttons are the shoulder buttons, but this time they're different again from the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus because the R2 and L2 are now analog triggers. And these analog triggers are so well implemented, they just feel so smooth and comfortable to use. Although having purely digital shoulder buttons, the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus was able to provide game streaming access. But now game streaming modern games, especially on Game Pass, with these analog triggers is a completely different level and makes the Retroid Pocket Flip so much more of a modern gaming handheld system as much as it is a retro gaming system. And the true awesomeness of having analog triggers really shows itself, especially when playing racing games. And racing games is exactly where this console really starts to shine, because it's not just the analog triggers that make a huge difference, it's the sliders as well. Now the sliders are one of the most noticeable differences from the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, which did have analog sticks. And a lot of the community, when they first saw these sliders, were not overly excited. Understanding that the sliders were needed to be able to fit into the form factor of a clamshell design, a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of sliders and feel like they are kind of a subversion of an analog stick. But I'm here to tell you that they could not be further from the truth. Firstly, these sliders are so well implemented, they're so well designed, they even have L3 and R3 click functionality. They are without doubt the best sliders I have ever used on any console ever. Now I will say playing first-person shooters with sliders is not quite at the same level yet as it would be using normal analog sticks. But what I will say is that playing racing games with sliders is absolute perfection. You see, when it comes to modern racing games, having good analog inputs is absolutely essential to providing that real racing feel. And whereas true racing connoisseurs will always choose a racing wheel to give you that fine input in being able to turn the steering wheel gently to get around certain corners, most of us enjoy our racing games using standard controllers. But there's an entire subset of people that play racing games using a special technique using their analog controllers. And what they do is they push the analog stick, the steering stick, all the way up forward. So then when they want to turn, they just gently can turn left and right to the side and get that kind of high fidelity you would want in analog steering. Using a normal analog stick, moving left and right, it's really difficult to get that real fidelity because this stick kind of naturally moves a little bit quicker and it's hard to get those in between movements. But the sliders on the Retroid Pocket Flip are the perfect answer to this, giving the right amount of resistance, and the way that they naturally slide instead of rock give you that absolute control and that high fidelity that you need in racing games. Pair these sliders in with the analog triggers and sprinkle in a little bit of the fact that the Sport Red looks like a Ferrari console, and you have the best handheld console for racing games I have ever come across. When it comes to reviewing all these retro handheld consoles, we're constantly looking for what makes one stand out over the other, what the slight difference is, even though they might share a lot of the same functionality and the same specifications. And the Retroid Pocket Flip truly surprised me in the fact that it stands head and shoulders above the rest of the competition in being an absolute beast for racing games. Now if you do want to get your hands on a Retroid Pocket Flip, the link will be in the description below. But if racing games is not your thing, then maybe the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus is the better option for you. If you want to find out more about that, check out this review right here.